After World War II, Europe was in ruin. Cities were destroyed, countless soldiers had died, and tensions between countries were in the air. Everyone wanted a lasting peace to prevent another atrocity of such magnitude, but countries are simply not working with each other. Robert Schuman aimed to change that. In 1949, he called a Council of Europe to gather countries and hopefully work out an agreement of cooperation. Known as the Schuman Plan, he proposed cooperation within Europe in defensive, political, and economic spheres. Of these, the first two never materialized, at least not right away. Countries are very reluctant to cede sovereignty to another country. However, European countries did come to an agreement on an economic partnership, namely 6 countries: West Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg formed the European Coal and Steel Community. This organization would later expand into the European Union we know today. As time went on, more European countries became enamored with the idea of working with fellow European states. The Suez Intervention in 1956, an embarrassment for Britain, was a trigger to their foreign policy that showed that they could not be very significant on their own, especially in an era where they were not the superpower of the day. Britain formed the European Free Trade Area in 1959, along with Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Austria, and Portugal. Perhaps most significantly, 1957 was the year that European Coal and Steel Community's leaders met in Rome to expand the community into the European Economic Community. They signed the Treaty of Rome, which formed the European market, which only included the original 6 countries at first. The European Free Trade Area's members gradually started applying for membership to this organization. In 1961, however, France, a founding member of the EEC, rejected Britain's entry on grounds that Britain was too committed to the United States to be fully engaged in the common market. President Charles de Gaulle dissented British membership. However, when France's elections rolled around, the new government was more sympathetic to the British and withdrew France's rejection of many countries. Denmark, Ireland, and the United Kingdom all joined in 1973. In 1979, the EEC elected its first female president, Simone Veil. Several more countries joined after periods of slow growth in the 70s. Greece, Greenland, Spain, and Portugal all joined the community between 1981 and 1986. 1986 also saw the expansion of EEC power as leaders approved the Single European Act. This act, among other provisions, enabled an extension of foreign policy powers. No longer was the EEC merely an economic conglomeration, it now had political influence as well. When the Berlin Wall fell along with the Iron Curtain in 1989, East Germany joined the community and many Soviet buffer states applied for membership. This sudden influx in members prompted a restructuring of the 30-year-old organization. In 1992, the Maastricht Treaty was signed, formally creating the European Union. A year later, in an effort to streamline trade, a central currency for all member states was proposed, called the euro. Eventually, enough states ratified it, although not all began to use it. It was officially enacted in 1999, and some states are still dissenting, using their own currency, like United Kingdom still uses the pound. As a relatively new organization, the European Union has had its fair share of problems. In 2004, a detailed constitution was proposed, the European Constitution. The document would have centralized authority away from individual governments and to the central government in Brussels, thus giving individual states less power and the central authority more. Some states passed the measure, however, referendums in Netherlands and France heavily defeated it. Britain postponed its own referendum indefinitely. There are several other issues the EU will have to face in the near future. Voters argue there is a gap in interest between political elites and the voting public. The European economy has stagnated with high rates of unemployment, and some feel it is the EU's job to do something about this. Another issue is that small member states feel ignored or usurped by France and Germany. Going back to the euro, countries have felt that their conversion rates from earlier currency to the euro have been unfairly calculated. Countries are becoming increasingly reluctant to cede sovereignty, and perhaps the most looming issue is that of Turkey. Having applied for membership over 30 years ago, the EU is still pending on the decision for several reasons. Europe is mostly Christian, whereas Turkey is mostly Islamic. Turkey is a poor country and has a large population, which would take up more money from the Union than it would bring in. Ultimately, these are issues that Europe will have to face sometime or the other. Yet the EU has been very successful in one of its founding goals. It has kept relative peace in Europe for over 66 years and looks to continue to do so in the years to come.